Hi folks, today I'd like to share with you a radius jig that I made for my wood lathe. I started off with a front hub out of an automobile. This particular one happens to be out of a Lexus, and used that as the base for the rotation of the jig. Now this particular hub has the bearings already preloaded. They've roll formed the edge of the hub and preloaded the bearings. Now some other kinds of automobiles have unpreloaded hubs that you would have to make a little bolt that would go through and preload that bearing. But this one came with the bearing already mounted and preloaded. So that made it a good candidate for this application. I knocked the studs out of it. I turned the locating hub off of the back, and then put another lug just wide enough to fit the base of the lathe in the back, so that when I put it up here, it's already aligned exactly with my headstock and my spindle. So after I got that mounted all up, I made a base out of steel. This is just bar stock that my very talented neighbor welded for me, and I machined it to fit the base, and drilled it for the bolts that bolt it to the base. It's all really tight, really smooth, and just worked out real well for this application. On top of that, my neighbor also supplied me with a spacer block, which he so graciously turned to the right thickness, so that I could mount my compound cross slide off my metalworking lathe. And this is very handy, having the compound cross slide. It takes care of being able to index in and out very precisely, and it has this handy tool post, quick change tool post, which allows you to switch tooling in and out. This particular tool here is it's a it's a boring bar, and I've taken a little piece of M2 steel. This is from Harbor Freight, but it actually is pretty good, and ground myself a cup cutter. Also, the good thing about these quick change tool posts is that the depth is set on the holder, and you can just slide those in, goes back to a stop, lock it down, and you're good to go. So right now I've got this piece of burl. Got a little bit more bark on it than I want, so we're going to turn and turn that down just a little bit so you can see how it cuts. And so I'm going to reach over and turn on the lathe, index it in. We'll show you cutting a little bit. Steady hand is good, but I don't seem to be doing that well. You can tell if you're really well centered if you make a little dust on this side, scrape a little bit on the back side. Just barely out of here that hit. Gives a nice finish. The smoother you feed, the nicer the finish is, but that's really got very, very little in the line of torn grain or any sort of machining defect. So looks really good. And one other thing I'm going to show you is this tool post is extremely handy in that you can switch out tools very quickly, and you can even mount. In this case, I've got a sander, so without tearing down the setup, I can mount this sander on here and also sand a true sphere. If I tried to sand this by hand, by just taking my hand and maybe a piece of sandpaper, the soft parts, the bark, would cut much quicker than this very hard burl. So it would give me an out of round condition because it would cut at different rates. But using a hard block and the jig to sand on, I can sand the wood, and if it starts to dig into the softer parts a little bit, it'll just glide over those. In other words, the attitude of the sander is controlled by the jig and not by just pressure, so it won't go in the holes. So anyway, that's my take on a radius jig. It not only cuts spheres, you can also go in front of center and cut hollows as well as spheres, or you could cut a sphere and cut it in two and flip it around and hollow it out. You could do so very, very precisely. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed looking at the jig. Maybe it gave you some ideas, and again, I just hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.